I'm Ashley Turner, and before we dive into this absolute catastrophe of a family dinner, let me ask you something. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Because nothing says family bonding quite like crowdsourcing your global audience whilst your offspring plots your demise. Right then, let me take you straight to that dinner where everything exploded. And by exploded, I mean it went about as well as a chocolate teapot at a summer barbecue. My mum leaned across the table, eyes locked on me like I'd just announced I was joining a cult, and snarled. Actually snarled like some sort of feral creature defending her territory. Your success means nothing. Your sister is my gold, the most important person in this family. Brilliant. Absolutely smashing parenting there, Mum. Really bringing the family together with that one. My hand tightened on the napkin as years of bottled-up frustration hit like a particularly aggressive wave at Brighton Beach. I'd built a bloody tech empire from scratch in Hollywood's startup scene. Right here in Los Angeles, land of dreams and wildly overpriced avocado toast, whilst they poured everything into her endless catalog of spectacular failures. But that night, as they begged for help with their mounting debt like Victorian orphans asking for more gruel, something in me broke for good. I slid the bill across the table, the one for $45,000 they'd racked up bailing her out again, and said with the kind of calm that only comes from being utterly, devastatingly done with everything. Here, take my mother's gold and pay it. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Or a family's illusions shattering. Either or really. Dad dropped his fork, staring at the paper like it was a death warrant written in Comic Sans. My sister shifted uncomfortably, her usual smirk gone faster than free samples at Costco. They expected me to cave like always, to hand over cash from my app success to save their sinking ship of delusion. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. Turns out even doormats eventually get tired of being walked on. This wasn't just about money. It was the final nail in a coffin of favoritism that had buried me for years. That silence stretched heavy as lead, or perhaps heavy as the irony of being called worthless by people who couldn't manage their own finances, until I pushed back my chair and stood. They thought I'd fold, but what followed wasn't forgiveness. It was the end. Growing up in our valley suburb home felt like a constant battle I was rigged to lose. From early on, my sister was the center of their world, and I was the afterthought they barely noticed. That dinner wasn't the start. It was the climax of a lifetime of being sidelined. But telling this now, it's my way of claiming the narrative they never let me have. Call it petty. I call it justice with a side of schadenfreude. From as early as I can remember, around 9 years old when most children are still figuring out that eating paste isn't cuisine, my mum made it crystal clear who the priority was. She'd lean in during family dinners at our valley suburb kitchen table and say things like, "Danielle's got that spark. She's my gold." Gold. Like she was some sort of precious metal instead of a human child. I suppose it's more poetic than my favorite, but only marginally. It wasn't just words, though. It showed in every little action, every tiny decision, every moment where I was systematically erased like a spelling mistake in a draft email. I came home one day absolutely buzzing from winning the school coding contest, clutching a certificate for building a simple game app that impressed the teachers. I rushed in expecting at least a pat on the back, maybe a well done, perhaps even a biscuit if I was lucky. My dad glanced up from his phone and muttered, "Good job, kid," before scrolling back to work emails with the enthusiasm of someone reading terms and conditions. But my mum. She barely nodded, already turning to Danielle like a sunflower towards the sun. "That's fine, Ashley. But look what Danielle drew today. Concept for a fun drawing app. Isn't she creative? Concept. Not an actual app. Not working code. Bloody drawing." She printed it out right there and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet, calling the neighbors over to witness Danielle's talent, like she'd just discovered the cure for cancer. My certificate ended up in a drawer, forgotten by dinner. Probably buried under takeaway menus and expired coupons, where it belonged, apparently. The favoritism hit harder with birthdays. Mine were always practical. Books or a cheap backpack, maybe 20 quid in a card with a quick happy birthday, scribbled inside like an afterthought on a shopping list. Danielle's. Full-blown parties in the back garden with balloons. A custom cake that probably cost more than my entire birthday budget for 5 years. And gifts like art kits or new gadgets she'd hinted at exactly once. One year at 11, I saved my allowance for months. Actual months of not buying sweets or magazines or anything remotely fun, to buy myself a basic laptop for coding practice. I showed it off at dinner, proud I'd earned it through sheer determination and fiscal responsibility. My mum shrugged and said, "That's responsible, Ashley." Then, with the timing of a skilled comedian, added, "But Danielle needs a new tablet for her ideas. She's my gold after all." The next week they surprised Danielle with the latest iPad, complete with accessories that probably cost more than my laptop. I sat there watching her unwrap it, feeling my own achievement shrink like a wool jumper in a hot wash. My dad tried to soften it once, whispering, "You're doing great on your own." But he never pushed back when Mum steered everything to Danielle. Spineless doesn't quite cover it, really. It wasn't long before the differences turned into direct conflicts. At 12, I entered a science fair with a project. An app prototype that tracked homework assignments, something I coded during late nights after my actual homework. Revolutionary stuff, truly. I poured hours into it, debugging errors on our old family computer that ran slower than a pensioner on a Zimmer frame. The day before submission, I left it open to test one last feature. When I came back, the file was gone. Deleted. Vanished into the digital abyss. I panicked, searching the recycle bin like a detective in a particularly boring crime drama. But nothing. Danielle walked in, smirking like the Cheshire Cat if it had a punchable face, saying, "Oops, must have been a glitch." I knew better. She'd been jealous of my focused time on the computer. And apparently deletion was her version of sharing. I rebuilt it from scratch overnight, barely sleeping, fueled by spite and cheap cola, and still placed second. At the fair award ceremony, my parents showed up late. Fashionably late, if fashion means prioritizing the wrong child, just in time for Danielle's art display in the next room. Mum gushed over Danielle's poster. "This is gold, pure talent." My ribbon got a quick nice work before they hustled us home. That night, I started a secret journal on my laptop, documenting every slight. The deleted file, the ignored wins, the constant gold praise for Danielle. It wasn't for revenge. It was proof for myself that I wasn't imagining it, that I wasn't going mad in a house that treated me like furniture. The pattern repeated in small ways that built up like compound interest on emotional debt. Family outings to the beach or malls in LA always revolved around Danielle's whims. She wanted ice cream, we stopped. If I suggested a coding workshop downtown, Mum waved it off with, "We don't have time." Danielle's got dance practice. My dad, Robert, yes, we're on formal name terms now because he earned it, would sometimes slip me a few extra quid under the table saying, "Use this for your tech stuff." But he never confronted Mum. Linda, that's my mum, ruled the house with her favoritism like a benevolent dictator who'd forgotten the benevolent part, and he enabled it by staying quiet. The silent accomplice is still an accomplice, Robert. I learned early to rely on myself. By 13, I was sneaking to the local library after school to use their computers for free coding tutorials. I'd code simple scripts like a budget tracker for my allowance, feeling a rush when it worked that I imagine is similar to what Danielle felt when someone liked her Instagram post. But at home, Danielle's half-finished drawings got framed in the living room whilst my apps stayed hidden on my drive like state secrets. One evening, after a rough day where teachers praised my math skills but Mum dismissed it as just numbers, because apparently numerical literacy is worthless in the modern world, I overheard Danielle on the phone with friends. She actually laughed and said, "Ashley's project got messed up. Total fail. She's so obsessed with computers, it's weird." It stung, confirming she'd deleted my file on purpose. Actual sabotage. I confronted her quietly in our shared room, asking why with the desperation of someone hoping for basic human decency. She shrugged. "You always hog the computer. Mum says I'm the creative one anyway." That moment flipped a switch. I stopped sharing my progress, locking my files with passwords stronger than Fort Knox. My journal entries grew. Dates, quotes, Even screenshots of chats where Mum texted Danielle my gold, with emojis but ignored my messages like spam mail. By 14, I was taking online courses on app development, staying up past midnight whilst everyone else slept peacefully, blissfully unaware that I was building my escape route one line of code at a time. One night, debugging a particularly nasty glitch, I realized this wasn't just survival. It was building something they couldn't touch, couldn't delete, couldn't diminish with their casual cruelty. At 15, hiding my efforts meant channeling them into something tangible. I started freelancing code gigs on platforms like Fiverr, fixing simple bugs for small businesses or building basic websites during after-school hours at a local coffee shop in the valley. The Wi-Fi was free, and I'd sip cheap black coffee that tasted like regret, earning 10 to 20 quid per job. It added up slowly, like saving for retirement when you're immortal. After 3 months, I had enough for a used Android phone. Nothing fancy but mine. I set it up with coding apps right away, proud I'd done it without asking for help or groveling for handouts. Meanwhile, Danielle walked in one day, flashing a brand new iPhone my mum had bought her for school projects. Because apparently taking selfies counts as education now. Mum beamed, saying, "Danielle needs the best tools. She's my gold." I gripped my coffee cup tighter, swallowing the urge to point out how my gigs paid for my own stuff whilst they subsidized her lifestyle like she was royalty. The gap widened with the subtlety of continental drift. College prep at 16 was a nightmare of my own making. I stayed up nights researching scholarships, filling out forms for tech programs at local universities like I was applying for MI6. I wrote essays about my self-taught coding journey, double-checking financial aid applications until my eyes burnt like I'd been staring at the sun. My dad, Robert the Enabler, caught me once in the kitchen at midnight and whispered, "You're pushing hard, Ashley. Keep it up." But when I asked for advice on one form, he hesitated, glancing towards the living room where Mum was helping Danielle with her art portfolio. "We'll see," he said, and that was it. The verbal equivalent of a participation trophy. They didn't hesitate for Danielle, though. She decided on a private art school with a hefty tuition that could have funded a small country's GDP, and they took out a loan without blinking, hiring a tutor to polish her application. Mum justified it over dinner. Danielle's talent deserves investment. She's gold. I nodded politely, but inside it fueled my determination to handle everything solo. Because apparently being self-sufficient is only impressive when you're forced into it. Danielle didn't stop at passive jealousy. She escalated to outright interference with the subtlety of a bull in a china shop. At 17, I started hanging out with a bloke from my coding club, a crush named Alex who'd actually compliment my projects instead of treating them like embarrassing hobbies. We texted about app ideas and things felt normal for once. Revolutionary, really. But Danielle noticed and turned it toxic faster than milk in the sun. She spread rumors at school and online, telling mutual friends I was arrogant and obsessed with being better than everyone. She even messaged Alex anonymously, claiming I badmouthed him behind his back. I found out when he confronted me awkwardly in the hallway, showing screenshots that traced back to her IP. Stuff like, "Ashley is too full of herself for you." Crushed me. Alex backed off, and my few friends distanced themselves, whispering about the drama like I was some sort of reality TV villain. I confronted Danielle in our room, demanding why with the desperation of someone who still believed in justice. He smirked. "You're always acting superior with your code crap. Mum says I'm the one with real potential anyway." Mum dismissed it as sibling stuff when I brought it up, siding with Danielle as usual. That betrayal pushed me to protect myself. I created a fake social media account under a random name, following Danielle and her friends to gather evidence without engaging. I'd screenshot posts where she bragged about the rumors like a story saying, "Dealt with some haters today, feels good." It wasn't for confrontation. It was my way to track patterns, adding to my growing digital folder of slights. Call it obsessive. I call it documentation. The twist came senior year when Danielle's choices backfired spectacularly. With the loan money for art school, she blew chunks on designer clothes and accessories instead of supplies or classes, because priorities, obviously. She'd post hauls on Instagram, bags, shoes, all for her creative vibe whilst skipping assignments. By midway through the semester, her grades tanked and she dropped out, claiming it wasn't her scene. Mum and Dad scrambled to cover the wasted tuition, but Mum still defended her. Danielle just needs time to find her path. She's gold. She'll shine. They never mentioned the debt starting to pile up from that loan. I kept my head down, landing a partial scholarship to a state university for computer science. When I shared the acceptance letter at dinner, Mum nodded distractedly. That's practical, Ashley. But Danielle's rethinking her options. Maybe a design boot camp. Dad gave me a thumbs up across the table but said nothing aloud. The silent support of a man who'd given up fighting. At 18, I stepped into college at a state university in Los Angeles, ready to carve my own path like some sort of determined sculptor with a chip on her shoulder. I hit the ground running, landing on the dean's list every semester whilst juggling coding gigs to cover books and rent. My grind paid off when I scored a competitive internship at a tech startup in Hollywood's growing scene, working on an app that helps students organize study schedules. I poured everything into it, staying late to debug code and pitch features with the enthusiasm of someone who finally had people who valued her work. The team trusted me with real projects, and for the first time I felt seen. When they planned a launch event for our app, I reserved 3 seats for my family, Mum, Dad, and Danielle. Hoping, foolishly, naively hoping, they'd show up to see what I'd built. I texted Mum the details, even called to confirm. She said, "Sounds great, Ashley. We'll try to make it." I believed her, picturing them clapping as I presented, like some sort of delusional optimist. The day of the launch, I stood backstage, heart racing, scanning the crowd like a lighthouse looking for ships. The room was packed with colleagues, mentors, even local press. But those 3 seats, me, devastatingly, predictably empty. My phone buzzed right before my speech. Text from Mum. "Sorry, honey. Danielle's got a networking event for her art portfolio tonight. It's a big opportunity. We'll celebrate your thing later." My stomach sank like the Titanic. Danielle's networking event was just a coffee shop meetup with some wannabe influencers, but it trumped my months of work. I gave my presentation, smiling for the crowd like a trained performer, but inside I was hollow. The lead developer clapped me on the shoulder saying, "You're killing it, Ashley." It should have felt like a win, but those empty chairs burnt a hole in me that no amount of professional success could fill. Danielle didn't stop at overshadowing. She went for sabotage with the dedication of a villain in a soap opera. A week after the launch, I got an email from my internship supervisor asking about concerns from a colleague. Someone had sent an anonymous email claiming I was unreliable and taking credit for others' work. I traced the IP through a friend in IT because of course I did, and it led straight to Danielle's laptop. She'd faked the email to undermine me, hoping to steal my spot like some sort of corporate Cain and Abel situation. I confronted her over the phone, voice steady but sharp. "Why do you keep doing this, Danielle?" She laughed it off saying, "You're too serious about your little app job. Mum says I'm the one with vision." I hung up, shaking with rage. When I told Mum, expecting some pushback, she spoke sharply. "Don't make a big deal out of it, Ashley. Danielle's just figuring things out. You know she's my gold." That was the moment I decided. No more playing their game. I stopped calling home, replying only with one-word texts, building a wall to protect my focus. Because apparently self-preservation is selfish now. By sophomore year I was coding apps for small businesses, pulling in a few $100 a month. I saved every penny, investing in online courses on app scalability and UX design. My dad noticed my distance once, calling to ask, "Everything okay, Ashley?" I mumbled, "Fine," and changed the subject. He'd shifted fully to Mum's side by then, echoing her praise for Danielle's potential at every turn like a broken record. The favoritism took a financial toll that would make an economist weep. Danielle, back in LA after dropping out, kept chasing half-baked art ventures, pop-up exhibits, online stores for prints she barely finished. Mum and Dad funneled money into her, paying for booths and supplies, racking up debt they didn't mention to me. I overheard them arguing one night when I visited. Mum insisting, "Danielle's gold. She'll make it big. We just need to support her." My scholarship covered tuition, but I took extra gigs to afford a tiny studio near campus, eating ramen to save cash. Danielle, meanwhile, posted photos in designer outfits, captioned "Chasing Dreams," funded by their dwindling savings. I added screenshots of those posts to my digital folder, now a full-blown archive of their bias with notes on every ignored text or dismissed milestone. Obsessive? Perhaps. Thorough? Absolutely. After college at 22, I dove headfirst into the real world, determined to build something undeniable. I landed an entry-level job at a tech firm in Hollywood's startup scene, coding for an educational platform whilst working 60-hour weeks. Nights were spent in my cramped LA studio, teaching myself advanced app development through YouTube tutorials with the dedication of a monk pursuing enlightenment. I scraped together every spare dollar, sometimes just a tenner from Skip Takeout, to fund my own startup idea, an app for personalized learning plans. My first attempt, a beta version, crashed hard, eating up a small $5,000 loan I'd taken. But I debugged, learnt, and relaunched, licensing it to local schools for a few $100 a month. That trickle of income felt like proof I could stand alone, even if no one at home noticed or cared. Danielle, meanwhile, was spiraling with the grace of a drunk ice skater. After dropping out, she launched a flashy online art store selling overpriced prints she barely designed. Mum and Dad, Linda and Robert, bankrolled it, pouring thousands into her website and ads, convinced she'd go viral. I heard about it through a rare family text chain I hadn't muted yet. Mum bragging, "Danielle's my gold, building a brand." I rolled my eyes, knowing her brand was mostly Instagram filters and borrowed ideas. Revolutionary stuff, truly. Then came her boldest move yet. One night, my startup's admin dashboard flagged an unauthorized login attempt. The IP traced back to Danielle's flat. She'd tried hacking my account to steal my app's framework for her store. It failed. I tripled security after her college email stunt, but she didn't know I'd caught her. I added the logs to my evidence folder, now a detailed archive of screenshots, texts, and notes that would make a solicitor weep with joy. I could have stepped in when Danielle's venture hit trouble. Her site crashed from bad coding, ironic given her hack attempt, and she lost customers faster than water through a sieve. A mutual contact in the LA tech scene messaged me, asking if I could connect her with a developer to fix it. I had the skills and contacts to save her, but I stayed silent. Her failure wasn't my responsibility. Their favoritism had taught me that. Instead, I focused on my own growth, pitching my app to bigger clients. By 24, I'd scaled it to a steady revenue stream, enough to move to a better flat downtown. Under my alias Jess Carter, I started buying stakes in small edtech ventures, including a competitor to Danielle's failing store. I didn't sabotage her directly. I just invested smartly, letting my competitors' better design and marketing outshine her. By 26, my stake in that venture was pulling in more than my day job. Mum and Dad's financial strain grew obvious like mold on bread. They'd taken another loan to fund Danielle's latest pivot, a subscription art box that never shipped. Their texts to me became sporadic, always about her. "Danielle's working hard. She's gold, just needs a push." Robert, fully on Mum's side now, stopped his quiet encouragements entirely. Once he called to ask if I could lend a hand for her business. I said, "I'm swamped," and hung up, adding his plea to my folder. Their debt was creeping towards $45,000, tied to Danielle's flops and their blind support. I knew because I'd overheard Mum on a rare visit, whispering to a creditor on the phone. I didn't offer help. They'd never offered me theirs to be Y27. I was netting more from investments than my salary. But I kept it hidden, driving a beat-up Honda to avoid questions. Family interactions were down to holiday texts I barely answered. Mum's messages were all about Danielle's next big break, never asking about my work. Robert's calls dwindled to nothing. He'd given up trying to bridge gaps, fully swept into Mum's orbit like a satellite with no will of its own. At 28, my life was unrecognizable from the valley suburb I'd left behind. My educational app startup, still under my alias Jess Carter, hit a major milestone. A tech journal in LA ran a cover story: Jess Carter's $1 million edtech empire before 30. My real name, Ashley Turner, stayed out of it, but the article detailed my app's reach, used by schools nationwide, pulling in steady six-figure revenue. I read it in my new downtown loft, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hollywood skyline, a far cry from my ramen-fueled college days. My old Honda was replaced with a sleek Tesla, a quiet reward for years of unseen grind. Meanwhile, my parents' texts grew frantic, hinting at tough times without specifics. I didn't respond, but I knew from my evidence folder, now a decade's worth of screenshots and notes, that their debt had ballooned to £45,000, tied to Danielle's failed art ventures. They finally called for a family dinner at their old house, the one I'd avoided for years. I agreed, curious but guarded, sensing they needed something big. Walking in, the place felt smaller. Faded curtains, chipped dishes, a shadow of the home where Mum called Danielle my gold. The house had aged like milk left out in the sun. At the table, Mum started with fake warmth that wouldn't fool a child. "Ashley, we're so proud of your tech stuff." My dad, Robert, nodded stiffly, eyes on his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. Danielle sat across, fidgeting, no trace of her usual confidence. Then Mum dropped the act, voice sharp as broken glass. "Danielle's my gold, the most important person in this family. Your success means nothing if you don't help us now." Robert chimed in, voice cracking like old leather. "We're drowning, Ashley. The bank's coming for the house. $45,000 in debt from Danielle's business loans." I sat still, letting their words sink in like water into concrete. My folder had tracked it all. Every loan for Danielle's flops, every post where she bragged about big plans whilst Mum cheered. I could have saved her venture. I had investors in my network who'd offered to back similar projects, but I'd chosen silence, letting her art store collapse under bad reviews and unpaid vendors. Now they were begging. Danielle leaned forward, desperate like a drowning person reaching for a life raft. "Ashley, I'll work for your company. Anything. Help us." Mum reached for my hand, eyes glossy with tears that might have been genuine. "Family sticks together, honey. You wouldn't let us lose everything, would you?" I pulled back, calm but cold as winter in Moscow, and slid a printed bill across the table. $45,000, their exact debt. "Take my mother's gold and pay it," I said, voice steady as a surgeon's hand. The room froze. You could have heard a mouse breathe. Robert's fork clattered like a cymbal crash. Danielle's face paled to the color of old parchment. Mum stammered, "What are you saying?" I leaned in, locking eyes with Mum like a laser sight. "You've known about this debt for years, haven't you?" "You did too. Every loan, every excuse for Danielle. You called her gold my whole life. Ignored my wins, my apps, my grind. You made your choice." I turned to Danielle, my voice as cold as liquid nitrogen. "You tried hacking my startup, spreading lies to keep me down. I could have saved your business, but why? You never stopped taking." Mum tried again, trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Ashley, we'll pay you back. Please, for family." I stood, tossing a few quid from my meal on the table. "You invested in your gold. Failed. That's not my burden." I walked out, their stunned silence trailing me like a funeral procession. Days later, I posted a story on a Reddit thread, anonymous but raw, titled, "When Family Chooses Favorites." I laid out the favoritism, the sabotage, the debt. Without names, just truth. It went viral. Thousands upvoting, comments flooding with stories like mine. Danielle's reputation in the LA art scene tanked. Her name came up in replies, tied to her failed store and scam reviews. No one hired her, not even for retail gigs. I'd like to say I felt guilty. I'd be lying. I drove by their house a month later. A for sale sign stood out front. Lawn overgrown, windows dark like vacant eyes. They'd lost it to the bank. Robert tried emailing me once. A shaky apology about missteps. I blocked him. Mum sent texts from new numbers, pleading for a call. I blocked those too, with the efficiency of someone swatting mosquitoes. Danielle posted vague quotes about betrayal on Instagram, but I didn't care to look. I settled into my loft, managing my startup from a glass-walled office, my Tesla parked below like a trophy. Success felt real, but nights alone hit differently. Quiet. Heavy. The price of cutting them out. Here's what I learned, and pay attention because I'm only saying this once. Sometimes you have to let go of toxic ties to rise, family or not. If favoritism is holding you back, walk away and build your own path. It's not easy, and it might leave you lonely. Proper lonely, the kind where you talk to your houseplants, but it's the only way to find your true worth. Don't let their shadows dim your light. Shine anyway and never look back. Because looking back is for people who have something worth seeing, and trust me, I don't. I'd traded family for freedom, and it wasn't always light. Success tastes different when you're eating it alone in a loft that echoes. But I'd built something they couldn't touch, couldn't delete, couldn't diminish with their casual cruelty. And that was enough. The Tesla's nice, obviously. The loft's brilliant. The money's real. But sometimes late at night, I wonder if I could have done things differently. Then I remember Danielle deleting my files, the empty chairs at my presentation, Mum's voice saying, "Your success means nothing," and I stop wondering. You can't negotiate with people who see you as worthless. You can't fix relationships where you're the only one trying. And you certainly can't make people love you when they've already chosen their favorite. So I chose myself. I chose my apps, my investments, my success. I chose the life I built with my own hands whilst they threw money at a daughter who threw it away. I chose freedom over family, silence over screaming, and peace over trying to earn love from people who'd never give it. Was it worth it? Ask me on a good day, and I'll say yes. Ask me on a lonely night, and I'll say I don't know. But either way, it's done. The bridges are burnt. The house is sold. The golden child is tarnished. And I'm here, telling this story to strangers on the internet, which is apparently what passes for closure these days. Thanks for listening to my story. It means the world to share it, though that might say more about my social life than anything else. If it resonated, hit subscribe for more real journeys like this, because misery loves company. And drop a comment with your own experiences or what you'd have done. Let's keep this conversation going. After all, we're all just trying to survive our families, aren't we? And remember, your family's opinion of you is just that. An opinion, not a fact, not destiny. Just someone else's view of your worth, and they might need glasses. Build your empire anyway. Shine anyway. And if they don't like it, well, that sounds like a them problem, doesn't it? Now if you'll excuse me, I have a Tesla to drive and a loft to sit in whilst contemplating whether emotional isolation is really better than toxic family ties. Spoiler. It probably is, but the jury's still out. But wait, because apparently the universe wasn't quite finished with its little social experiment. There's more. There's always more, isn't there? Like a bad sequel no one asked for, except this one actually happened. 3 months after the dinner disaster, I was settled into my routine of therapeutic isolation. Work, invest, occasionally remember to eat something that wasn't delivered in a cardboard box. My therapist. Yes, I got a therapist because even lone wolves need someone to howl at. Kept asking if I had any regrets. I kept saying no whilst staring at the wall like it contained the meaning of life. Then Danielle's Instagram went private. Not unusual. Except she'd always been the type to broadcast her breakfast to the world. I checked through my fake account. Old habits die hard apparently, and found nothing. Radio silence. For someone who'd documented every coffee she'd ever consumed, this was suspicious. 2 weeks later, a mutual acquaintance from the LA scene, one of those people who knows everyone and tells everyone everything, bless them, sent me a message. "Have you heard about your sister?" Turns out Danielle had got a job. An actual job. At a call center. The kind where you wear a headset and get yelled at by strangers for 8 hours a day. My sister, the golden child, the one with vision and potential, was troubleshooting people's broadband connections for minimum wage. I'd like to say I felt nothing. That would be a lie. Felt complicated. A swirl of emotions that my therapist would have had a field day with. Satisfaction. Obviously. Schadenfreude. In spades. But also something uncomfortably close to pity, which I immediately tried to smother with logic. She'd done this to herself. Every deleted file, every spread rumor, every hacking attempt. She'd built this prison brick by brick whilst mom and dad handed her the mortar. But still. Call center. Even I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And Danielle definitely qualified. The pity lasted approximately 48 hours. Then I found out why her Instagram went private. Apparently, after my Reddit post went viral, some internet detectives, because of course they did, had pieced together who the golden child was. Not through anything I'd written, mind you. I'd been careful. But through Danielle's own social media trail. Years of posts about her struggling artist life, the art store debacle, the subscription box that never shipped. Someone had compiled it all into a thread titled, The Golden Child's Greatest Hits. It was brutal, thorough, uncomfortably accurate. Screenshots of her bragging posts next to her actual failures. Reviews from angry customers. Even photos of her wearing designer gear whilst claiming to be broke. The internet, in its infinite wisdom and questionable morality, had done what it does best. It had receipts. Danielle's response. She tried to play the victim. Posted a tearful video before going private, about cancel culture and family betrayal, and how hard it is to be misunderstood. The comments section tore her apart faster than piranhas at a pool party. Mom tried to defend her naturally. Created a Facebook account, her first at 63, to post about how cruel strangers were attacking her daughter. Got shared approximately 0 times. Dad stayed silent, which was somehow worse. And me. I watched it unfold from my glass tower like some sort of Silicon Valley Rapunzel, feeling emotions I couldn't quite name. Was this what I'd wanted? Public humiliation for my sister. The complete annihilation of her reputation. Yes and no. Mostly yes. But also a tiny, annoying bit of no. The problem with revenge, I was discovering, is that it's deeply unsatisfying when it's served by strangers. I'd wanted them to see what they'd done, to understand the decades of favoritism and neglect. Instead, Danielle was being dragged for scamming customers and faking her struggles whilst wearing Gucci. Which, fair enough, but it wasn't quite the same. My therapist asked me how I felt about it. I said, fine. She gave me that look therapists give you when they know you're lying but are too professional to call you out directly. We sat in silence for 3 minutes. I pay $200 an hour for that silence, by the way. Worth every penny. Then came the phone call I'd been half expecting and fully dreading. Not from Mum or Dad, they were still too proud for that. From my aunt. Dad's sister, who'd always been the reasonable one at family gatherings. The one who'd occasionally slip me a $5 and wink when I was young. Ashley, she said, her voice careful, like she was defusing a bomb. I know you don't want to hear this, but your parents are in a bad way. Waited. Let the silence do its work. They're living in a 1-bedroom flat in Van Nuys. Robert's working at a hardware store. Linda's. Well, she's not taking it well. Danielle's there too, all 3 of them in this tiny place. It's not good, Ashley. And this concerns me how. Said voice flat. She sighed. The kind of sigh that carries years of family drama and unsaid words. Because you're better than this. I know what they did. I've always known. But they're still your family. They made their choice, I said. They chose Danielle. Repeatedly. For decades. Now they're living with that choice. And you're choosing to let them suffer. I'm choosing to not be responsible for their disasters anymore. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment. Then, your mom had a stroke last week. That landed like a punch. I actually felt my breath catch, which annoyed me immensely. Is she? She's alive. Recovering. But Ashley stressed did this. The debt, the foreclosure, watching Danielle fall apart. It's killing her. I should have felt something. Guilt maybe. Fear. Instead, I felt numb and vaguely angry at myself for feeling numb. I'll send flowers, I said and hung up. I did send flowers. Expensive ones. The kind that say, I have money and complicated feelings. I didn't include a card. 3 days later, Danielle showed up at my building. I don't know how she got my address. Probably through some public records search, given that my alias didn't extend to property ownership. The concierge called up, asking if I was expecting a Danielle Turner. Almost said no. Almost. Send her up, I said, immediately regretting it. She looked dreadful. Not Instagram filtered. Not artfully disheveled. Properly rough. Dark circles, cheap clothes that didn't fit right. Hair that had been washed but not styled. The golden child had tarnished completely. I know you don't want to see me, she started, standing in my doorway like a vampire waiting for an invitation. I didn't ask her in. Correct. Mum's sick. Really sick. Dad's falling apart. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for everything. The deleted files, the rumors, the hacking. All of it. I was jealous and stupid and Mum made me think I was special when I wasn't. And I took it out on you because you actually were special and I couldn't handle it. It was a good apology. Well structured. Hit all the right notes. I'd give it a 7 out of 10 for sincerity. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay, I heard you. You're sorry. Apology acknowledged. Anything else? That's it. 20 years of hell and you just say, okay? What do you want, Danielle? Absolution. Forgiveness. A job. Money. Be specific, because I've got a meeting in 20 minutes. She flinched. I don't know. I want my sister back. And there it was. The thing I'd been avoiding thinking about for months. Did I want her back? Did I want any of them back? Your sister, I said slowly, was someone who won coding competitions and got ignored. Who built apps from scratch and got dismissed. Who could have used a single word of encouragement but got silence instead. That person doesn't exist anymore. She died around the time her family chose not to show up to her startup launch. Ashley. No. You don't get to Ashley me. You made your choices. You actively sabotaged me. You spread rumors that destroyed my social life. You tried to hack my company. You didn't just stand by whilst Mum played favorites. You weaponized it. So no, you don't get your sister back, because she evolved into someone who doesn't need you anymore. Tears were rolling down her face now. Proper ugly crying. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But Mum's dying and she's asking for you and I promised I'd try. She's recovering according to Aunt Sarah. Physically maybe. But Ashley she lies there crying about how she failed you. How she destroyed our family. Dad won't even look at her. They're not speaking to each other. It's all falling apart, and I know it's our fault, but you want me to fix it, I finished. Like always. Something breaks, call Ashley. Need money. Call Ashley. Need someone to clean up your mess. Ashley's there. Except I'm not anymore. She wiped her face with her sleeve. I'm not asking you to fix anything. I'm asking you to visit. Once. Just so she knows you're alive and okay. Then I'll never bother you again. I should have said no. Should have closed the door on this chapter permanently. Instead I heard myself say, I'll think about it. She nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, you were always the impressive one. We all knew it. That's why she pushed me so hard. She thought if she praised me enough, I'd become like you. But that's not how it works, is it? No, I said quietly. It's not. After she left, I sat in my loft, staring at the Hollywood skyline, wondering when exactly success had started tasting like ash. My therapist would have a field day with this. $200 worth of insights, minimum. The thing about cutting people off is that it's supposed to feel liberating. Freedom from toxicity. But no one tells you about the part where you're free but also floating in space, untethered, wondering if maybe some connections are worth the pain. Or maybe I was just tired. Tired of being angry, tired of being alone, tired of winning battles in a war that left everyone bleeding. I didn't know if I'd visit Mom. Didn't know if I'd ever speak to Danielle again. Didn't know if forgiveness was weakness or strength, if boundaries were protection or prison. But I knew one thing. I'd built this empire brick by brick whilst they watched. And whether I let them back in or kept them out, it was my empire. My choice. My life. And that somehow was enough. Cheerio. Except it wasn't enough, was it? Because 3 days later, at 2 a.m, I was still awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of person lets their mother recover from a stroke without visiting. The answer apparently was me. The kind of person who'd been forged in the fires of systematic neglect and had emerged with emotional armor thicker than a tank. My therapist, earning her considerable fee, pointed out that I was allowed to visit without it meaning anything. It's not a commitment, she said. It's just closure, or curiosity, or basic human decency. I'm familiar with the concept, I said dryly. Just not practiced at it. She smiled that knowing smile. Ashley, you're not as cold as you pretend to be. Give me time, I muttered. So there I was, a week after Danielle's visit, standing outside a shabby one-bedroom flat in Van Nuys. The building was the architectural equivalent of giving up, beige, crumbling, with a security door that didn't lock and a lift that smelt of regret and old cooking. I'd driven here in my Tesla, which now felt like a ridiculous, ostentatious statement. Look at me, I made it whilst you crashed and burned. Subtle as a brick through a window. I sat in the car for 15 minutes, having what I can only describe as a minor existential crisis. What was I doing here? What did I expect to happen? A tearful reunion. A heartfelt apology that would magically erase decades of favoritism. The chances of that were roughly equivalent to finding a unicorn in Tesco. Finally I got out, walked to the door. Knock. Like a normal person doing a normal thing, not someone about to face the woman who'd spent 30 years telling her she was worthless compared to her sister. Dad answered. Robert. He'd aged a decade in 3 months. Gray hair, deeper lines, eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to hope. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Or a bailiff. Both seemed equally plausible in his world. Ashley, he said, voice cracking on the second syllable. Robert, I replied, because apparently we were still on formal terms. May I come in? He stepped aside wordlessly. The flat was exactly as grim as I'd imagined. Cramped, cluttered, smelling of cheap air freshener, trying valiantly to mask the scent of depression. Danielle was on a sofa bed that clearly doubled as the living room furniture, scrolling her phone. She looked up surprised, then quickly pocketed the device. You came, she said, like I'd just performed a miracle. Don't get excited. I'm here for 20 minutes maximum. Mum was in the bedroom. The only bedroom, I noted, wondering where Dad slept. Probably the floor, knowing his talent for self-sacrifice that somehow never extended to defending me. She was in bed, propped up by pillows that had seen better days, looking smaller than I remembered. Frailer. More human. The stroke had affected her left side. I could see it in the way her face drooped slightly, the way her left hand lay useless on the blanket. She looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears immediately. The Linda Turner special. Weaponized crying. Ashley, she whispered. You came. Apparently so. I stayed by the door. Safe distance. Aunt Sarah said you wanted to see me. She swallowed hard. I need to tell you something. Before it's too late. You're recovering. It's not too late for anything. Except our relationship, I didn't add. That ship had sailed, sunk, and was currently rusting at the bottom of the ocean. Please. Sit. She gestured weakly at a chair by the bed. Sat. Not because she asked, but because standing felt too much like a power play. And despite everything, I wasn't trying to be cruel. Just protected. I was wrong, she said, and I actually blinked in surprise. Linda Turner admitting fault was rarer than solar eclipses. About everything. About Danielle. About you. About how I treated you. Bit late for that revelation, isn't it? She flinched. I know. I know it's too late. But I need you to understand why. This ought to be good, I muttered, crossing my arms. She took a shaky breath. When you were born, you were so easy. Smart, independent, never needed anything. You just did things. Figured them out. And Danielle, she struggled. With everything. School, friends, just existing in the world. And I thought. Her voice broke. I thought if I praised her enough, supported her enough, she'd become strong like you. But I was wrong. I made her dependent. And I made you feel worthless. Both of you I destroyed. I sat there processing this. It was an explanation, certainly. Not an excuse. Never an excuse. But an explanation. So your solution to one daughter struggling, I said slowly, was to systematically neglect the other? To pour everything into Danielle until she became entitled and I became invisible. That was your grand parenting strategy. I thought you didn't need me, she whispered. You were so capable. So strong. I was 9 years old. My voice rose despite my best efforts. I was a child who needed her mother to be proud of her. To show up to her events. To not call her sister gold every 5 bloody minutes whilst treating me like an afterthought. Mum was fully crying now. I know, and I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it. I stood up. Sorry doesn't give me back the childhood where my mum actually loved me. Sorry doesn't undo Danielle deleting my files or spreading rumors or trying to hack my company because you made her think she deserved everything whilst I deserved nothing. Ashley. Dad's voice from the doorway. No. I turned to face him. You don't get to Ashley me either. You stood by and watched. Every time she dismissed my achievements, every time she praised Danielle for mediocrity whilst I excelled in silence. You saw it. You knew it was wrong. And you did nothing. Slipping me a few quid under the table isn't parenting, Robert. It's guilt money. He looked at the floor. Still couldn't meet my eyes. After all these years, still a coward. I'm weak, he said quietly. Always have been. Linda was so strong, so certain. I just went along. Well, congratulations. Your weakness helped create this mess. I gestured around the flat. Hope it was worth it. Danielle appeared in the doorway, eyes red. Ashley, please. They know they messed up. We all do. Can't we just move forward? I laughed. Actually laughed, sharp and bitter. Move forward. To what exactly? Happy families. Sunday roasts. Pretending that 30 years of systematic favoritism never happened. To something better than this, Danielle said desperately. To anything better than this. I looked at the three of them. Dad defeated. Mum broken. Danielle lost. The family that had made me feel worthless. Now worthless themselves. I should have felt triumphant. Vindicated. Instead I just felt tired. Here's what's going to happen, I said, voice steady. I'll help. Not because you deserve it. Not because we're family. But because I'm not you. I won't watch people suffer when I have the means to help, even if they made me suffer first. Hope flickered in their eyes. I immediately squashed it. I'll pay off your debt. The $45,000. Consider it a gift because you'll never pay me back. I'll also cover 3 months of a better flat. Somewhere with 2 bedrooms minimum, because this is depressing even by my standards. Ashley. Mum reached out with her good hand. I'm not finished. In exchange, you'll all get therapy. Proper therapy, not just sitting around feeling sorry for yourselves. Danielle, you'll keep your call center job or find something equivalent. No more art store fantasies funded by other people. You want to be creative. Do it in your spare time like everyone else. Danielle nodded quickly. Robert, you'll grow a spine. Learn to advocate for yourself instead of just going along with whatever's easiest. And Linda. I looked at my mother. This woman who'd shaped my entire childhood through her systematic neglect. You'll learn that gold isn't a term of endearment when you use it to exclude another child. You'll learn that strength doesn't mean independence from needing love. And you'll learn that parenting isn't about fixing the squeaky wheel whilst ignoring the one that works. I will, she whispered. I promise. Your promises mean nothing to me, I said flatly. But I'll take your actions. Maybe in a few years, if you've all actually done the work, we can have a conversation about whether there's a relationship to salvage. But right now, your projects, charity cases, not family. The silence was heavy enough to crush diamonds. Thank you, Dad said finally. Ashley, thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it so I can sleep at night knowing I'm better than you raised me to be. I left them there, walked back to my Tesla, sat in the driver's seat, and promptly burst into tears. Ugly, snotty, shoulder-shaking tears that came from somewhere deep and wounded that I'd thought I'd buried under success and spite. Turned out you can't logic your way out of 30 years of emotional damage. Who knew? The next 3 months were an exercise in controlled masochism. I set up a trust fund for their rent. A nice 2-bedroom in a decent area of the valley. Nothing fancy but livable. Paid off their debt in one lump sum that made my accountant actually gasp. That's a house deposit, Ashley, he said. You're just giving it away. Apparently so, I replied. Add it to the list of questionable decisions I'm making this year. I arranged therapy for all 3 of them. Separate therapists because putting them in a room together at this point would probably violate some sort of Geneva Convention. Weekly sessions which I paid for because of course I did. I was apparently running a rehabilitation center for terrible parents and their golden child experiment gone wrong. I didn't attend any sessions. Didn't visit the new flat. Didn't take their calls unless absolutely necessary. This was charity, not reconciliation. There's a difference, and I was clinging to that difference like a life raft in a sea of complicated feelings. My own therapist pointed out that I was trying to buy my way out of emotional engagement. You can't fix them with money, Ashley. Watch me try, I said. That's not how healing works. Then consider this an expensive experiment in human behavior. She sighed that professional sigh. $200 an hour for that sigh. Worth it. Debatable. Updates came through Aunt Sarah, who'd apparently appointed herself the family mediator. Dad was actually going to therapy, working through decades of conflict avoidance. Mum was in physiotherapy for the stroke and regular therapy for the emotional damage she'd caused. Danielle was still at the call center, apparently taking courses online for actual marketable skills. Graphic design, not art concepts. They're trying, Aunt Sarah told me over coffee one day. Really trying. Good for them, I said, stirring my overpriced latte. Do they want a medal? Ashley. What? I'm helping. I'm paying for everything. What more do they want? Your forgiveness. I laughed. That's not for sale. Even I have limits. But the thing about paying for people's recovery is that you inevitably become invested in the outcome. Like a particularly depressing reality TV show where you hate the contestants but can't stop watching. I found myself checking in with Aunt Sarah more frequently. Asking questions I pretended were casual. How's the therapy going? Is Danielle still working? Has Mum's mobility improved? You care, my therapist observed. I'm monitoring my investment, I corrected. That's not what this is. Agree to disagree. Month 4, Danielle sent me an email. Not a text, too casual. Not a call, too presumptuous. An email. Professional. Respectful. Subject. No expectations, just thanks. Ashley. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you're helping out of obligation or pity or just because you're a better person than I ever gave you credit for. But I needed to tell you that therapy is working. I'm seeing all the ways I was awful to you. All of it. The deleted files, the rumors, the hacking attempt. It's all so clear now how jealous and entitled I was. Mum's therapist told her she turned me into a monster by constantly comparing me to you. I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. Every time she called me gold, it was because she was saying you weren't. And I weaponized that instead of seeing how messed up it was. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to become someone who might, one day, maybe deserve a sister like you. No expectations. No pressure. Thank you. Danielle. I read it 3 times. Then closed my laptop and stared at the Hollywood skyline for 20 minutes, feeling things I couldn't name. She's changing, I told my therapist the next session. And how does that make you feel? Like I'm the villain in a story where I'm supposed to be the hero. You're neither, she said gently. You're just human. They hurt you. You protected yourself. Now they're trying to change. None of that makes you a villain. But I don't want to forgive them. Then don't. Forgiveness isn't mandatory. But, Ashley. She leaned forward. Eventually you'll need to decide. Are you punishing them or protecting yourself? Because those are different things. I didn't answer. Didn't know how to. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my evidence folder. The decades worth of screenshots, texts, notes. The careful documentation of every slight, every dismissal, every moment I'd been made to feel less than. And then, in a moment of either growth or madness, jury's still out, I archived it. Didn't delete it. I'm not a saint. But I moved it into a folder called History, instead of leaving it on my desktop where I could access it every day. Small steps. Tiny, microscopic steps towards something that might, in several years, possibly resemble healing. Or maybe I was just tired of being angry. Tired of letting them live rent-free in my head whilst I paid their actual rent. Either way, it was progress. Messy, complicated, uncertain progress. But progress nonetheless. And that somehow felt like enough. For now. Cheerio.